Alexander the Great Volkanovski looks to unify the featherweight title when he takes on the interim champion Yair El Pantera Rodriguez. So Volk is actually coming off a decision loss to Islam Makhachev at lightweight, while Yair is coming over a submission win over Josh Emmett where he won the interim title. This is going to be a fun one because Yair is a very unique challenge to anyone. He's very tall, and although they have very similar reaches, it's actually Yair's kicking game that's been the central talking point. His hands are okay. They've gotten better over the years. He has a very solid 1-2, and his hands are very, very fast. I think he should use his punches to kind of camouflage those kicks, and he's going to have to try to keep this fight at range. I think the biggest weakness in his game is actually his takedown defense. It's been that for a very long time. And although it's gotten a little better, it's still, I think, an issue. He's been taken down at least once in each of his last 4 fights. And that was against some fighters that aren't really known to be great wrestlers. Guys like Max Holloway and Jeremy Stevens. Even Brian Ortega is not a great wrestler, and he was able to take Yair down. And most of those takedowns, they came from Yair's kicks. He threw kicks that were ill-advised and eventually led to him getting taken down. One good thing for Yair is that when he does get taken down, he's been very active off his back. He's been throwing elbows, and he's very active with his submissions. He's always throwing stuff up, trying stuff out. Despite that, he should still try to keep this fight on the feet. But even then, Volk is no slouch when it comes to the striking. He's developed his hands very well. He is super well-rounded, and I think his fight IQ is one of the best in the game. Not only is his offense everywhere really good, I think his defense everywhere is also very good. So that being said, I have Volkanovski by decision. I do think he's going to be able to take Yair down eventually. And I think when he's in those positions, I think he's going to do way better than someone like Josh Emmett did, where Volk is going to apply better and smarter pressure that's not going to allow Yair to get that offense off his back going. And he's going to minimize those submission threats. I think one of Yair's biggest strengths is how light-footed he is. He really bounces, and those kicks come from out of nowhere, and they come very powerful. But I think in this fight, this might be one of his weaknesses, just because since he's so light on his feet, he tends to hit the mat very often. And I do think Volk will be able to bring this fight to the ground. He's going to apply great pressure and great control when it comes to the grappling. And despite Yair's great kicking game, I do not think that Volk will be completely outmatched on the feet. That being said, Yair is very dangerous. He is dangerous everywhere and at all times. We saw that in the Korean Zombie fight. Volk has to be perfect the whole way through as long as the fight lasts. Like I said, I got Volk by decision. I just think he's the better fighter, and I think he's the smarter fighter right now. But yeah, let me know what you think. Leave a comment down below. In the co-main event of UFC 290, Brandon the Assassin Baby Moreno defends his flyweight title against a familiar foe when he faces Alexander the Cannibal Pantoja. Moreno is coming off a win over Davison Figueiredo, where he unified the flyweight title, while Pantoja has been on an absolute roll, winning 3 in a row, with wins over guys like Manel Kape, Brandon Royval, and Alex Perez. This will actually be the 3rd time these guys have crossed paths and fought each other. The first time would be on The Ultimate Fighter, where Pantoja would submit Brandon Moreno, eliminating him from the competition. And the second time would be in 2018, where he would win again by unanimous decision. It's hard to look at those fights and take much from them, especially because at that time, Brandon Moreno was only 24 years old when that second fight happened, and he was only younger and way more greener when that first stint on The Ultimate Fighter happened. Now he's grown, and in my opinion, he's in his prime, even though he's only 29 years old now. And Brandon Moreno, he's got some really good boxing, that Mexican style boxing. He leads with a very long jab, and he likes to put together his combinations with them. And he has pretty decent power for flyweight. He has 5 wins by knockout or TKO. And in my opinion, he will be the better striker. Pantoja has been improving his striking. We've seen it, but he still has struggled against really good strikers and lengthy strikers, guys like Brandon Royval and Matt Schnell. He was getting outstruck in those fights until he was able to take it to the ground. And that's where Pantoja eats, man. That guy is a huge submission threat. He has 10 wins by submission. He's an absolute beast with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He came out absolutely blazing in his last fight against Alex Perez, but I expect him to take a more calculated approach in this fight. Pantoja is older at 33 years old, but I do think now both guys are in their prime, so this is going to be an exciting matchup. And I think this is going to prove a lot, because Pantoja's best bet is to take this fight to the ground and to use his grappling to control Brandon and look for those submissions. Although he did submit him before on The Ultimate Fighter, I don't think it would be that easy this time. Brandon has improved so much, and especially his grappling. He is no slouch when it comes to the grappling. He actually has 11 wins by submission himself. And I think Brandon's overall game has evolved so much since then. He's way better, where I don't know if Pantoja is going to have his way anymore. When I first saw this matchup, I thought it was going to be an easy 3rd win for Pantoja. But looking back at those fights and researching those fights, I have my doubts now. And I actually think Moreno's going to win by decision. I think he's a way different fighter, and now I think he's the better striker, and I think that gap in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is no longer wide. I think they're much closer than people think, and I think a big factor is Brandon Moreno is a man now. At 24 years old when they fought the second time, he was even younger the first time. You know, he was still a kid. He was still growing into his body, and now he's a man. So is Pantoja. So I don't think he'll be able to get ragdolled as easily as he did before. I do think Moreno will probably get taken down still, but I do think now he's skilled enough to get up and to avoid those dangerous positions. And I think the experience of being on the biggest stage is really going to help him. Also, I think for Brandon Moreno, it'd do him good to mix in his own takedowns. You know, be wary of the submissions, but let Pantoja know that you're not just going to lay down when it comes to the grappling. And of course, he needs to protect his back. I think if Pantoja gets his back, he can control him for the entire round, even if he can't submit him. And that's an easy round in the pocket for Pantoja. And yeah, you know, Pantoja is looking to make a big splash, beating a fan favorite like Brandon Moreno for the third time. That'd be pretty impressive, but I'm going to have to go Moreno by decision. But let me know down below what you think. Do you think I'm underestimating Alexandre Pantoja? Or you think Brandon Moreno got this in the bag? Let me know. Leave a comment. So at UFC 290, we got an absolute banger when the number 2 ranked middleweight Robert the Reaper Whittaker looks to derail another prospect when he takes on Dricus Still Knocks Du Plessis. You know, Rob, he's coming off a decision win over Marvin Vettori, while Du Plessis is currently on a 5-fight win streak with some impressive wins over Derek Brunson and Darren Till. You know, Rob is basically running the block when it comes to the contenders. You know, he's beating all of them. You know, he has wins over Marvin Vettori, Jared Cannonier, Kelvin Gastelum, and Darren Till. You know, he has shown and proven that he is an elite fighter among the middleweights. You know, he's so well-rounded. You know, his striking is his bread and butter. He strikes out of a karate stance where he's very light on his feet. And man, this guy manages distance so well. You know, he can move into range. He can move out of range, out of danger. He can also move laterally. You know, it makes it very difficult for his opponents to catch him. You know, his patent special move, that 1-2 high kick, seems to work every time, no matter what. You know, I think in this fight, Rob will have the speed advantage. I do think he'll be the faster fighter, and I think he needs to use that to his advantage to dictate the pace, to make sure he's the one dictating when they clash. You know, he's going to have to use his movement to enter range and land his big combos and then get out of danger. You know, lead all his offense with that jab. And, you know, Du Plessis, he's a very strange fighter. He's on a 5-5 win streak, and every single one of those wins have been very odd. You know, he seems to get better as he gasses, and he always looks tired. You know, his style is kind of sloppy, and he makes it very chaotic in there. He's actually a pretty decent striker, and he will have a slight reach advantage. But I think a clean fight at distance is something he needs to avoid. I think in order to have success, he really needs to push the pace and make this a very sloppy fight. I have Robert Whittaker by decision. He has shown that he can fight a very smart and mature fight, and I think that's something that Du Plessis can't do. I think if this comes to technique, Robert Whittaker is miles ahead of Dricus. And a lot of people fall into the pace that Du Plessis sets, but I think Rob is really good at staying and setting his own tempo that he wants to fight at. You know, that being said, if Du Plessis manages to win this, he will 1,000% put himself next for the middleweight title. You know, he's already got a little bit of beef with Izzy, you know, a little story there. He will have done something that no other contender has done, which is gone through Robert Whittaker. So yeah, I have Whittaker by decision. I just think he's the better fighter, the more technical fighter, and this is going to be his fight to lose. But let me know down below what you think. Do you think I'm underestimating Dricus? Or do you think it's going to be another classic showcase by the Reaper? Leave a comment down below. So at UFC 290, we got a great battle between two lengthy lightweights when the number 10 ranked Jalen the Tarantula Turner takes on the number 11 ranked Dan the Hangman Hooker. You know, Jalen Turner is coming off a close decision loss to Mateusz Gamrot, while Dan Hooker is coming off a TKO win over Claudio Poyes. You know, the Tarantula is going to be looking to get a statement win over a lightweight staple in Dan Hooker. You know, both these guys are so tall for lightweight. Jalen Turner is listed at 6'3", while Dan Hooker is listed at 6 foot. Both guys have the same reach at 75.5 inches. Jalen Turner, he's a striker with some really good power. 9 of his 13 wins are by knockout or TKO. You know, this guy's always trying to press forward. He's bringing the fight to every opponent he faces. But because of that, he does get a bit reckless and he gets caught with a lot of shots. You know, he's been able to eat some, but he has been finished 3 times already in the UFC. And he will have to be very careful because Dan Hooker can bang and he will throw with him every time. You know, Dan Hooker, he has 11 wins by knockout or TKO. He's always willing to throw with you. And despite the 3 knockout losses, he's actually still pretty durable. You know, both guys are very long and both guys do a good job of using their length to find submissions. You know, Jalen Turner, he has 4 submission wins while Dan Hooker has 7. Yeah, both guys have very tricky submission games. You know, Dan Hooker has been a lightweight staple for years now. So this is a great fight for Jalen Turner to get some steam after that close decision loss to Mateusz Gamrot. You know, he can show that, hey, you know, he lost to a top guy in Gamrot, but he still belongs with the best of the best with the win over Hooker. While Dan Hooker can show that he's not a stepping stone for these young guys and that he is still a force to be reckoned with at lightweight. But that being said, I have Jalen Turner by decision. I think this is going to be a very close fight. I think Dan Hooker's experience is going to really make this fight very close. And this could end up being fight of the night, in all honesty, if both guys just throw caution to the wind, which both guys are used to doing. But I think Jalen Turner will fight a much smarter fight, maybe a slower fight. And in my opinion, he's going to be the one shooting the takedowns or mixing them in if any of these guys do. I think if he decides to fight a smart fight, I think he can really use his lengthy weapons to help him, not just his strikes. But he has some very long legs, so he can use those kicks. He can use those kicks down the middle and those knees to kind of deter Hooker from closing that space. So that's why I'm going to have to go Turner by decision. But let me know down below what you think. Do you think I'm underestimating Dan Hooker? Leave a comment down below. And yeah, it's going to be a great night of fights. Do not forget to tune in, and I'll see you next week.